welcome to our opening session for Saturday of Ecosocialism 2024. It's fantastic to see you all here. My name's Sam, and I'll explain a little bit about what's happening for the rest of the day just shortly. But before we do, just the friend who was going to do a welcome to country is not available, but Ray has offered to step in and do an acknowledgement for us. Raelene Cooper, she'll be speaking shortly. I'll explain more about what she'll be presenting on. But first we'll do the acknowledgement, then I'll come back to you.
How do I start this? It's different when it's not Yungura. Look, I'll just say Waiba Wandewa from my country, hello. And it's Kaya from the Noongar mob here, I think if I said it right. So look, as acknowledgement, I'd like to acknowledge our traditional custodians from the Djab nation, our past, present, and our future generation leaders. And for all of those who have come today on the Djab Ngora, welcome.
Thank you, Ray, and obviously us in the organising committee, we acknowledge that the land was never ceded, always was and always will be Aboriginal land. And the Socialist Alliance stands in solidarity with Indigenous people in the ongoing fight for freedom from incarceration, for land rights and for genuine material sovereignty. And as if to underline how far we still have to go in this country, I was just speaking to Megan before, and she drew my attention to the fact that in just the last 2 weeks there have been 7 deaths on Noongar country of people either in custody or interfacing with docs and the state, basically. So I'd like to ask you just to join me in a minute's silence for those deaths before we begin proceedings. Thanks very much. All right, I've had to step in as chair for this session. Many of you know our activist Patrina Harley. She was originally going to be chairing, and so we were going to have an all-female lineup of powerful activists, but even the most powerful activists get struck down by COVID every now and then, and that happened to Patrina the day before yesterday. Fortunately, I recovered 2 days ago, so otherwise I wouldn't be here either. You know, it's almost hard to remember that 12 months ago, all the discussion in the Australian media was about The Voice. It's almost like that discussion has just been sort of swept aside by the horror of the genocide that's been happening in Gaza. But the connections between the two things are not of course not accidental, and I think that I don't think I'm the only person who's been almost a bit taken aback about how quickly and immediately and unconditionally the majority of gutsy grassroots Aboriginal activists that we know have shown their support for the Palestinians. And equally, and I say this because I was overseas when October 7 happened and didn't come back to Australia for 4 weeks, to come back to the demonstrations and to see that there were a lot of young people who'd just done their own homemade signs that said, "From the river to the sea, always was, always will be." So they just instinctively got it, that this is about, wherever it is in the world, Indigenous people who've had their land, their lives, their languages ripped away from them. And it's also the case that no matter how you approach the question of the voice, whether you were a progressive no voter or a critical yes voter, and I know there's people of both complexions in this room today, is that the work that we have to do goes on, and it was always going to go on. And the immediate concrete steps that the Australian state and government could take to improve the lives of Aboriginal people and to begin, even just begin the journey towards reconciliation based on justice and truth and treaty still need to happen. And they were going to need to happen, and they were going to need to be fuelled by grassroots activists doing the hard work, regardless of the outcome of the referendum. And that's where we are today. And so we're really lucky to be able to have three fantastic, gutsy speakers who can address that precisely from their experience, their areas of work, the sorts of stuff that needs doing. So the first presentation we're going to get is one that was a pre-recorded Q&A with Lydia Thorpe, who wasn't able to be here in person, but agreed to be here electronically. So we're going to hear a short presentation from Lydia, who had a bit of a quick back and forth Q&A about the way forward in 2024 with some of our activists in Melbourne before they came over. As you know, she's a senator, Gunnai, Gunditjmara and Djab Wurrung activist and politician and independent senator for Victoria, like I said. Then we're going to be hearing from Megan Krakouer. People in Perth will know the absolutely indomitable Megan Krakouer, who is just at every demo, not just for Indigenous rights, but anything going around that involves justice and dignity and care for planet Earth, but has been particularly outspoken on the crushing, horrible intersection of colonialism, the justice system and Indigenous people. Megan is a Menang woman of the Noongar Nation and director of the National Suicide Prevention and Trauma Recovery Project and the Southwest Aboriginal Land and Sea Council. And then we'll be finishing up before we go into discussion and back and forth with Raelene Cooper. Many of you know Raelene as well, particularly Patrina, and that's why Patrina's so sad not to be here. Ray is now I hope I get this right, Ray is a Mardudhunera woman, a former chair of the Murujuga Aboriginal Corporation and founder of Save Our Songlines, and can speak to you about the intersection of the fight for country and climate and environment and plenty else besides. Just as a little bit of a footnote to that, I was talking to Sally just before, and there's a newspaper article just come out today which shows that the Bureau of Meteorology staff have been directed to put their efforts into doing special projections just for Woodside. So to protect Woodside's important infrastructure. The biggest gas projects, happening, the biggest fossil fuel projects happening in Australia, which are contributing to the terrifying possibility of runaway climate change and extreme weather events. And so what's the response of the Australian state? Special weather projection services just for Woodside, so they can make sure all their... Anyway, we could go on. Ray will talk about it. I won't do that. So this is for the interstate guests. This is Western Australia. Welcome to the fossil fuel Death Star. This is it. If you have time to wander up St George's Terrace, they're all racked up there. The people trying to destroy life on Earth. Anyway, Ray can talk about that. I'll stop my segues, and we'll go to the video first, and then as I said, we'll hear from Megan and Ray. Thanks to the tech team down the back there.
How would you characterise the Albanese's government approach to First Nations issues?
Oh, well, they're weak. They're not a party for our people. They've never been a party for our people. And we heard Gary Foley the other night on Wurrung Country talking about former Labor Prime Ministers and how they've all done wrong by our people when they've been in power. So Albanese is no different. I'm not impressed. Wasn't impressed during the whole referendum debacle. And yeah, he continues to perpetrate the colonial violence on our people as the 2024 Prime Minister. He's no different to the last.
On the voice referendum, I guess taking into account both the process and the outcome, do you think it has put the struggle for First Nations rights in a weaker or stronger position?
Oh, look, I think it's put us in a stronger position. I think if the referendum had have succeeded, we would have been going backwards to have a powerless advisory body with two old white men in charge, Albanese and Dutton, dictating the terms, only shows how much power that would have had. And yeah, I think that it resets the conversation and takes us back to the fact that we've been violated against since invasion. The war began with those boats arriving, and the war has not ended. So unless we have a treaty or some form of peacemaking agreement, then we can't move forward. And we have that opportunity now to continue to fight for treaty. And we need everyone that voted yes or voted the sovereign no to also support treaty. Treaty is what will benefit everybody in this country, including our water and our land.
So what would a genuine and meaningful treaty look like?
Well, it has to have free, prior and informed consent from those family clan groups. We know what a language map looks like. If you go around and yes, there are some disputed areas on those maps, but it's a good kind of snapshot of how many language groups we do have in this country. And each and every one of those language groups must have free, prior and informed consent and determine for themselves what treaty looks like for them. So if Gunnai mob, my mob, for example, say that we don't want a coal-fired power station in the Latrobe Valley or a nuclear power plant, then we can say no. And that should be the right of all of our people across this country. But also, on top of that, we should be able to economically empower ourselves, and that could mean that if we are 3 or 4% of the population, then we want 3 or 4% of the GDP, the stolen wealth that this country continues to take away from us. So a treaty can be so good for all of us, but particularly for First Peoples whose land it is. And we should be able to determine what happens on our land, when it happens, and be free of the violence.
Do you have any comments about the process, like in terms of, I guess, the grassroots versus the top-down process?
It has to be grassroots, and that's where those family clan groups or those language groups need to self-determine what they want. And it can happen at the local government area. We don't need state and federal governments. We can work with our local government areas to do treaties in communities at the grassroots level. We need to show the state and federal parliaments that we don't need them. We can sort our own business out locally, and we need to set the example of how it can be done. And I've seen this done. I've seen some good conversations happening at that local government area with traditional owner groups. And yeah, that's the way forward. It has to come from the grassroots. We can't have Albanese or Peter Dutton deciding what treaty looks like in this country. It has to happen at the grassroots level, and we want young people involved particularly.
Separate to the treaty, but obviously overlapping, what do you identify as some of the immediate measures and things, I guess the priority issues to be implemented for to improve the lives of First Nations people?
Well, they need to stop killing us. We need to implement the recommendations to the Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody. They're 3 decades old. They say that they've implemented them, but they haven't. We need to stop the amount of our children being taken away from their families, their communities. So we need to implement those recommendations. We need to stop the destruction of country, stop the destruction of water. So we need rights. We need to be able to say, we don't want to gas our country. We want the right to say no. And currently, there's no chance of that. And that's where, you know, they're disingenuous in saying that they are the party for First People when we're fighting the very same people to maintain songlines and sea country. So those are the things that need to happen. We need to we need to end the war and stop the violence. And as you know, they could do that this week in Parliament. They could actually implement the remaining of those recommendations at the federal level and save people's lives, but they choose not to do that.
Any comments on stolen children?
Well, you know what, 24,000 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children in out-of-home care today. It's a crisis. It was a crisis last year. It was a crisis when they came out with those recommendations, and that's, you know, over 20 years old. So the system that is racist. Like every time we have to deal with the system, whether it be state or federal governments and their systems, we are violated. We are violated from the very systems that are meant to serve and protect us. So we need fundamental change to decolonise these colonial inventions that weren't made for us. They weren't made for Black people. They weren't made for women. And, you know, parliaments are old. They still follow the old rule book of the old white men in the 1900s that created the problem that we're still dealing with today.
Well, actually, talking about history, I mean, I know in the past you have, and consistently you've raised the importance of truth-telling as a first step. In the context of Australia as a settler colony, what do you think that would involve, or what would that look like? What does truth-telling mean to you? Well,
we have to look at, you know, what examples have already happened. If we look at South Africa with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission there, we need the truth to be told, but we also need the power to call people in to be accountable. We look at what's going on in Victoria with the Wurrung Commission, which is great. You know, they're subpoenaing basically ministers to come and answer to pass policies, which, mind you, still happen, and to see the police apologise for their behaviours and their ways in 2024 was laughable, actually, where now people are still dying in Victoria at the very hands of the police. We need that power, that Royal Commission power to bring people in, but also there needs to be serious repercussions. You can't just say sorry and think that, you know, all is well. You need to say sorry, and you need to pay the consequences. There needs to be consequences, whether that be funding or reparations. But that's, you know, people need to be held accountable and not get away with what they've been able to do to us for so long. So truth-telling is what will set us free.
Is there anything else that you want to say to this conference?
Look, we just need, so to all the allies out there, thank you for inviting me along. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. I've just arrived in Parliament today. We've got 2 weeks of Parliament, And there's a lot of dodgy deals going on. There's a lot of legislation that this government are trying to ram through. And I just think that, you know, the people watching this, thank you for your allyship and your solidarity. You're always a staunch crew, but we need to maintain the pressure. We need to free Palestine. We need to stop deaths in custody, and we need a treaty going forward. And I hope that you can all be part of that. And good luck with the rest of your conference. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
All right, slight. Yeah, you come up here, Ray. Yeah, so slight change in the program. We'll go to Ray and then Megan. I've already introduced Ray, so I'll let her take it from here.
Righties. Waiba, wandewa everyone. I'm still nervous when I do these things, so just bear with me. Now, where's this? Here we go. Okay, I'm not computer literate, everybody, so just bear with me. If something goes, so be it. Okay, what's here? Yep. All right, I guess, look, thank you, and that was really great, I guess, with, you know, Senator Lidia Thorpe. The last time I went to Canberra, obviously to fight the fight with our Resources Minister, Madeleine King, in terms of the relevant people and, you know, First Nations people, Aboriginal people. I tend to like Aboriginal people in saying that. However, you know, fighting the fight it's from the moment we're born. And I didn't really know this up until, you know, 8 odd years ago. You know, I've grown up in the Pilbara, up in the Kimberleys, so obviously in those certain spaces, you see it. Look, I have a white father, and, you know, that ship floated over this way from there. My great-grandfather is off the ships. So, and, you know, I've always been, I guess, from a personal note, you know, a few years back when I gave up drinking, I sat in the backyard for 4 hours bawling my eyes out, and I was really, what was the word? I actually didn't know what I was doing. And I bawled and bawled and thought, what is my purpose? It feels like I'm flogging a dead horse here. You know, I'm doing what I can. I'm fighting with my community, my families, my people, and I don't understand how we're, you know, working in right mixed amongst mining. You tend to see a lot of things, and it's not good. So I guess coming from, you know, from my perspective, that's where I guess I can only talk for myself and my experiences today. So first up, certainly I'd like to give my all to solidarity to all country mob and everybody in this room. To the Wadjuk Nation sister, thank you so very much for being part of this and meeting you today. It's been great. I've heard lots of great stuff that you do. I don't get out too much, people. So in saying that, look, I'm learning as I go along, and this has been a fascinating yet very challenging time. And I'm pretty sure everyone in this room, for everybody. And the space I come up into was not anything I'd imagined. And quite frankly, it's turned me into, I almost feel like I'm becoming a racist person. And it's true as I stand here. And I don't, you know, excuse the French, get the shit from the cops. I mean, they just hammer me, you know. And then you're talking about, you know, the government. Okay, first of all, our governance, all right, in my culture, this is the law of the land. Our governance, our cultural protocols and our cultural safety, this is where it starts from, at birth. And it took a long time, and my family are a family of spiritual healers. And the way I see it, and this will be straight up from me, the blue and white collars of the world got nothing on blackfella politics, and that's straight up. And it's a dog-eat-dog world everywhere, but you're fighting your people, and we're fighting everything, you know? And it's like, okay, where do we start? you know, our sister sits here, and from what information I've learnt from her, you got to be a special kind of people or persons to be doing this kind of stuff, because it ain't easy. And I'll tell you right now, when I started this, I stepped away from something I really loved, and that was Murujuga. It is my birthright, and it is my bloodline that runs through that place. So if ever I had a purpose, this was it. Unfortunately, it's almost made me become semi-racist, but at the same time, it's taught me about people and about programs, people, and about our society in a whole different world. And it's damn scary, learning about everything here. So I'm going to go from the start, and excuse me, this here, I used this clip when I was over in Sydney doing the fight, the biggest party in the world, the Pride. And yeah, my daughter typed all this stuff up, and anyway, but don't worry about that bit, okay? And I was rushing around this morning. There's some major stuff going on in my street right now. I'm just telling Megan about it. So I'm definitely not a digital person. But look, getting straight into it, look, today I'm here to talk about what happened. I can only tell you my experiences, all right? I can't talk for anybody else, and I'm getting hot now. Getting nervous. So look, if I get this right, where do I press it? This one? No? That one? Where do I press this to? Where do I point it?
Anywhere it should work.
You've got to be really specific with me.
I think it might. Oh,
Yeah, that's all I could see. Action. Okay. All right. Let's get in the swing of it, right? I feel really like a teacher up here. Okay, I'm usually the student. Okay, look, we're going to go from the very start with Save the Songlines. I know we've got 15 minutes. I'll rush it. So bear with me, everyone. So the information actually came to myself, and one of the individuals, or two of them actually, is sitting right over here. One taking a photo of me. My big sister Esther, who's from my way, but she's got a lot of big base here in Wajak community and with the LGBTI mob, my big duru. And my awesome bestest mate over there, my bestie, Jesse, and he's making me really nervous now. So, look, in saying that, information came actually, and they were looking, these individuals, didn't know them, all these white people, they want to know. And I only just came from a board meeting. So when I met them all at my mum Josie's base, who's my mum's younger sister, I'm like, oh, how you going? Nice to meet you. All these men in the backyard, and they're telling me this yarn about what's going on in the Ngura. And I'm like, that's not happening, because I just come from a board meeting, you know, of this place. And they're like, no, this is what's going on. So I'm mortified and horrified, and I'm bawling. My mum's bawling. We're all crying because I'm a director of this Aboriginal organisation. However, I don't know exactly how entrenched it is, and given that we have this agreement, we're supposed to know this stuff, all right? And exactly what our senator said, all right, it's all about money grabs. It's about the land, whether it's mining, whether it's oil and gas, whatever it is, it's about an opportunity for government and industry to get fatter in the pockets. Don't worry about anybody else that suffers along the way. All right, so we then got the information. We then come and, you know, when you have information, one thing I always say to my kids, and they'll roll your eyes, and my grandkids will probably do the same next, education is knowledge, knowledge is power, right? I don't know where actually that saying comes from, but whoever they are absolutely right and brilliant. So we made the connections, of course, and we built a team. So the Save Our Songlines generated from that. And really it just sort of come up in the end. It was like, look, we've got to save the songlines. Right? So basically we did that, and we began to rally in Karratha. And rallying, I don't know what rallying is. You know, the only thing I'll rally up is rally all the kids into the kitchen table and get ready for dinner. So it was all news to me. So rallying these people, which we did in Karratha, it was the first one in a long time, right? And like I said, I don't get out much. Anyway, knowing about all this stuff that's going on in the background, we got a whole bunch within a week. My newly made friends, the little team we had with Save Our Songlines, And we rallied up, 50 people were there. I was amazed. I was shaking like a leaf and like, oh, because you're always expecting, you know, a backlash from everybody. Doesn't matter what colour, what diversity, what race, everybody. That just doesn't want it to happen. And certainly we did. But I was so thrilled. 50 people got up there, you know, and we were like, well, this is cool. You know, feeling really cool about this. And then, boom, cameras are in front of me. What do I say? And it's hard to try and maintain, you know, a sensible yarn or a wanga coming from the heart without the F-bombs or the S-bombs. And so it's been a lot of learning, trust me. But in saying that, look, we got the community together, we released an open letter, I went around to a lot of my mob, a lot of them just get out, you know, walking down back the driveway, okay, next. But look, there was support there in a minimal space, but where I'm from, our land is getting desecrated. So we have the country mob, the Ngorora mob who hold blood ties. You have those mob who the government and industry love to talk to and have at the table. They're the yes people. So this is my world, all right? And I'm going to be blunt. This is my world, and this is what we have to deal with. So there's always the yes people trying to shut you down because they're the ones sitting up with the industry and they're sitting up with government because they're getting this. That's what yes means, this here, kuya, money. All right, so we went up there and my dear friend Jess helped me because you don't want to know what my first letters were. Government, so he had to come in and actually say, no, we got to do it like this. So a lot of learning I've done, trust me. Best student ever, hey. Come on. Me. So anyway, so we had to go. I stood up in Parliament there with this letter. They didn't want to talk to us. And I did say to the mob I was with in Murujuga, and I said, listen, you don't want me on opposition. You don't want me on this side because I'm going to push it because someone needs to be responsible. Someone needs to be held accountable. This is unbelievable what's going on here, you know, but we'll get to that bit. So, you know, I got up there on Parliament with my uncle, who's an Nullama man, Mr. Ben Smith, a doctor, Professor Ben Smith, he's unbelievable. These men who have fought the fight in their industry, which is, you know, in education. So they've copped it a lot too. So in saying that, we're all copping it left, right and centre. And then went up there and I read this, you know, this letter from the heart and coming from a space where I'd never been in. You do it in your lunchbox at home, but outside the space it becomes a pretty of a scary world because it's real out here. This here is basically just a short snippet of our songline. This is to me, which I now will take you into what songlines are. I'll skip through some stuff you can't see, and just to let you all know, there's images in here of family members who have lost and who've been in the fight. Usually we won't show it, but today I'm going to show it because I'll always remember these people, and they were a part of their fight and my fight, and this is real for us. So here we've got the turtles and some eggs nesting. We have a megafauna here, which is, I guess, the northern quoll you would know now. And here we have the megafauna kangaroo. So you're looking at 6-7 foot roos back in the day. And that munda, they're probably half the size of that wall, if I was to explain it in that way. And this rock, this munda, they're not just drawings or carved into it. They've been here for millenniums, for evolutions. And yet this is what I fear, is they're going to be there any longer because of what's happening. Industry, government, all right? So when we talk songline, I'll just go with what's going on here. So Pilbara, if anyone doesn't know, is up on the far left of Australia. It's probably the most densest place in Australia of mining. We have mining all around here, but this is, you're driving up 20 kilometres, you'll see a mine. You drive another 50 kilometres from that, you'll see another mine. It's full on. That's mining. But when I've learnt the stuff I've learnt in terms of oil and gas, everyone in this room would be mortified if you don't already know. This is all the learning I've done, and it's terrible. So up in the Pilbara, we practice and preach our culture. It's still happening. So just to give you a bit of Karatha, Dampier Port. Up here in Dampier is the Burrup, if I can get it right, Palago. I can't say it. Yep, that's it, sister, thank you. And so basically, not only is it an infrastructure of mining, and you'll see all these places where it will say. Pretty good map, actually. But yeah, in saying that, not only is the Burrup condensed with mining and industry, it is also condensed with a World Heritage nominated over 1 million petroglyphs. So what you saw there in petroglyphs, this is what we're trying to protect. This is what I'm trying to protect. This is what our families and our friends are trying to protect. Not only are we protecting the ancient rock art and the ancient songlines, it's the environment, all right? It's the surrounding areas. It's the air, it's the water, it's everything in the area that's being polluted right now as we speak. And so when we talk about songlines, the whale dreaming, I hold that in here. It's so hard to explain to people who just might think, okay, she's a bit, because it does. People do think that. When they're looking at me, I'm talking, and I'm like, okay, how can I change the narrative here without feeling like I'm, losing my marbles? But it's a time, like I said, of birthright. When we're born with some special gifts. And these gifts are our songlines. These are what is in us. So take it back, I think, to the 50s. They had some scientists go in there, drill into some rock art. They pulled the flint out and they tested it. It's got human DNA in it. Some of that DNA is mine. So when I say to people, it's a bloodline connection, a DNA connection, ngorara, all right, people. That's what I talk about. Please don't ask me how to explain it because I'm not a scientist. That's just how it is. So let's flip the page again. Now this is a picture I wanted to show you. So this is some of it, what's out there. This is not what's out there now, because there's more. So I can only talk about what I'm fighting right now, and it would be on that Burrup Peninsula, right? So here we got the LNG, KGV LNG camp. We've got LNG here, the Pluto train. Now we've got another Pluto going. And all along this area, mind you, this area around and surrounding is a national park. All right, so it blows my mind. Do you do this on a national park anywhere else? I don't know. If there's gas or oil or something their government and industry want, they'll dig it. All right, so this is just there on the north of the Burrup. Then you have right next to it Rio Tinto, which is, I reckon Rio Tinto probably about as big as this. And you've got, it's like a mine site. You know Doctor Who, the TARDIS? You walk in and you go, holy, it was a little box and now it's huge. You go into this mine and it just, for the eye, as far as you can see, mountains and mountains of iron ore. All right, and I'm like, okay, I know this because I work there too. And so then we have on the other side, Yarra fertiliser plant. All right, it was Methodox some time ago. I was actually involved in there listening to my mum and not really paying any attention, playing the game, eating the food. And it was just some of the things that were being said where I'd ask my mum, say this, and it was like, I've got 40 elders here sitting across the room talking to these people who want to build a big fertiliser plant there. This is going back, and none of them know what they're saying because English is not their first language. All right, and so I'm the youngest. They're going, well, I don't know what's going on, but what I know is this doesn't sound right. So I said to Mum, let's go, get up, let's go. And the whole lot of them got up and we all walked out. These people were furious, right? And it was like, no. And they're like, what's going on? I don't know what's going on, but I'm telling you now what's going on in that room. You're not being told the truth. And that's where I came in and started helping my mum, sort of understanding. And even back then, I didn't know crap about anything. So look, let's go on. And I guess here you can see also how large and the scale in that one area, Northwest Shelf LNG, Pluto LNG, all in the blue, right? And then you've got Yarrafurt all here, condensed with 100,000-year-old rock art. All right, so, let's just keep going. What are songlines? Well, Mum Josie, if you haven't looked on the web, and look, I'm not a Facebooky person, so I don't know how to do that. My kids do that for me. But songlines are something, like I said at the beginning, it's about what's in here. And we're born with it. It's our birthright. And so there are places and things that happen in our journey. I can't get into that because it's culturally sensitive, a lot of it, but it is what it is, and this is what we carry and hold. All right? Physically. Yeah, crazy. Oh, here we go. This man is not this young anymore. But when he was out there, this is what he was doing. So he was asked to go out there and start. This is Ken Mulvaney, one of the individuals who's assisted me a lot with the Section 10s, given to Tanya Pilsek in terms of, because they denied me the Section 9, which is immediate protection, and basically said it's too early, it's too thin, you can't do it because there's no immediate threat, because the works weren't going to be done for another few weeks, okay? So where do we go? Where the works start, what do I do then? So the Section 10, excuse me, is a Section 10 is Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander protection, and basically it allows us as a relevant person to be able to say, well, hang on a minute, we need to do this. So basically it was to stop this from happening, and I don't know if we can, how can we lift it up, or we don't? So anyway, in saying that, Robin Chappell, who's also been one of the unbelievable individuals who've done a lot of work on the rock art, anthropology, archaeology work, and, basically been asked to go out there and record all this stuff. So in the middle of recording this, this is what they're doing. What am I supposed to record? Interesting, come on. How is that even, I just don't even know. But look, this is what they were doing, removing big pieces of rock art, and so they're literally pulling this rock from the ground. And it's like if you've never had tooth done, I'm telling you, it's exactly like that, where you're ripping it and you can hear it. I sat there and watched my mum in tears, watching this, and like I didn't really understand then, and now I do. So when her, what's the word, overwhelmingness, is just too overbearing, and I can see it, I can see it destroying a person that you love so much, but there's nothing you can do. And, I think to this day, I know my mum's always been by my side, but I do feel that I was cheated, and she died of a broken heart. And this is how it is, and we watched this, witnessed this happening in real life. I'll go going. Obviously, the dangers of Scarborough, I've been fighting this because I know the information now. And it's not great. When you're turning around with Woodside alone, damaging our cultural sensitivities, but not only that, it is the animals, because these are our songline carriers. The whale is one of our biggest. They're depicted on rock art, they're depicted all over within our songs that our Jawi, that our men sing to protect it on behalf of the women. All right? So in saying that, when they're saying Scarborough gas would produce 1.6 billion tonnes of carbon emissions over the next 25 years, remembering they've allowed this to go on for another 30 years. Even though the Paris Agreement states, and this lady over here, Sally will tell me if I'm saying the right thing because, I'm learning. But so in saying that, it boggles my mind. Okay, you've got a climate crisis here that's starting to be a critical thing, like a real thing, and yet you're still allowing, even though you know that the United Nations agreement is you've got to come down, not a little, a lot. And they still continue, we're going to keep this going for another 30, 40 years. Okay, I'll be well and truly gone by then, but someone's going to have to take the reins, right? So, the gas from the Scarborough would travel through pipeline to the ocean, 400 kilometres of Woodside's onshore plant. This here, after it's been hammered and drilled down kilometres into the ground, digging up that one and dig, seismic testing, whatever it is, the disruption of what happens in the ground is phenomenal. It's crazy, all right? I don't want to get into it because I'll start freaking myself out. But look, it's contaminated now, all right? And even if we do pull it up, what happens later, right? But because it's contaminated, the T norms. You know, you've got your, your asbestos. You've got the contamination of radiation. Like, I have fears. I love my bush and fishing. I have fears pulling up a fish that's got 7 eyeballs and 13 fins. Like, am I going to eat this? Probably not. What do we got to do about this? This is real. This here, this is sitting right in front of one of our important places. Right there. And that's just one of them. Right? You're standing literally on this beautiful place again, nominated by World Heritage nomination. Mark McGowan got up there a couple of years ago, not a fan of his, and basically said straight out, industry and culture can work hand in hand. How? How is that? I don't understand. He never wanted to speak with me. And the reason being, I probably would have, not been a friendly conversation, of course. However, this is the truth of it. I'm not a scientist. I had to get scientists to tell me this. So this is exactly what it is. Burning of fossil fuel releases sulphur, nitrogen oxides. This is in the atmosphere. And the first place, if you haven't been there and you go to the Krakouer gas plant, they've got a living, cultural information place, all about how awesome the gas plant is. It's like, okay, but you walk outside and I notice right around, like this, all the bricks, and the bricks that have all laid out there. Oh, okay, what's going on with this? That looks scary. And I had no idea at the time, but I know it's not right. And then I asked the question, what's all this about? This is later on. And people tell me, that's the acid rain. What? This is over years of the dew coming off the roof, all right, and dripping, and it's actually eaten, like the sides where the, the roof ends and the dew comes down. There you go. If that's not physical and that's not something, I don't know what it is that it's got to be, right? I don't know. But look, this stuff here goes up. It'll be a sunny day. I've been swimming in the beach, and guess what? I'll look at it and touch it. Get on the what's the name, because I do know how to do that. Get on the Google, and I'll go, what's it like in Krakouer? Right there and then, where I'm sitting, just come out of the beach, out of the water, it's raining. I'll guarantee you, any one of you go there and you do that, it'll tell you it's raining in Krakouer. All right, and it's not, obviously, but we need to go and talk to the meteorology mob about that one, don't we? Yeah, obviously. They're the next mob I'm going to visit. Just letting you know. Same thing here. Look at this little cartoon character, isn't it cute? All right, Scott Reef. This is exactly it, Browse Basin. 54 wells around the reef. I'm surprised they haven't gone out to Ningaloo. I'm surprised they haven't gone to the barrier, start drilling in there. Like, I really am not, and I know for you guys to go, don't say that. It is true. I am surprised they haven't done it, even though they are being affected from, other parts of our continent. It's affecting us everywhere. All the islands that surround Australia, they're all sinking. I think Albanese, one of us turned around, you're a big fan of his, aren't you, Sam? Albanese, he sits there, yay, and no disrespect to anybody, all right? We're going to get this island mob, their island's sinking. We're going to get 11,000 mob to come over and give them visas to come and live in Australia. Because, I'm a good bloke and that's what I'm going to do. Okay, that's a Band-Aid solution. Right there. So what are you going to do with the rest of the islands when they're all gone? Where are you going to put them? And frankly, how is this country going to survive? We've got a lot of area, but there's some areas we can't live in, right? That's why we're all on the coast. Don't know how that's going to go. We're going to be scrambling. Now, this is what I'm talking about, the country mob that I've lost, families. So my old Jada here, India Bundy woman, and this lady here, they've been fighting a fight for a long time, Nana Robin Churnside. Nana, my woman. And obviously her kids and their grandkids. This is the first time they're getting up there. My mum and I did the same thing. A couple of the Woodside officials got a bit of a clout, but, it is what it is. Back in the day, it would have been probably worse. But in saying that, this is why. When you read that, every year until 2070, total climate damage from the Burrup Hub project is equivalent to 35 coal-fired power stations. And that there is a scary figure when you look at it like that, right? Yeah. Because they're all busting their chops over the eastern states about it, right? Yeah, they had a good win over there. So this here, the destruction, this is what it affects. Our secret sacred places, right? Our animals. I think, is it, oh, did I go past? I don't know what I did. Okay, here we go. So when this all first started, Mum Josie and I, someone turned around and said to me, because it was just a thing, we're going to take this to the United Nations. They laughed at me. And I'm like, okay, let me tell you a story. You know, when I hear that, I'm one of them people who don't tell me you can't, because I know, you know, there's always a way. And you always got to have your plan A, B's and C's. And at the end of the day, that was I went around and a dear friend who works in Farah, amazing lady, helped me out. And yeah, it was just by chance. My mate Jared and I were coming back from, you know, one of these protests, and I'm in the thing, I'm crying, and he's crying in the car, and I don't know what to do. But anyway, look, it happened. We got over there. My mate Jess came over with me, Mum Jose and I. We walked in acting like we know what we're talking about. We walked in and go, okay, who do I have to go see to go and stand up on the stage or whatever? No, there's a process. It was an amazing experience and a very humbling one. To sit there and hear from a gentleman, I'll tell you this story quickly. Tell me if I've got to get off the stage, because I talk too much.
You can wind up, that's all right.
But he was actually, like, he was shouting. And I was like, geez, there is someone louder than me. And I'm looking, and he's a I think I could call him an Amazon gentleman. And it was what he said, like, I had to leave the room because I was freaking out. And I had to go and have a few smokes to calm me down, because it was really overwhelming, right? But it was what he said in 221, and it would be the same as what we're dealing with here, sister. 221, there were, I think it was 19 women who were going in to who were coming to the United Nations for that particular fight, and it was, you know, address the United Nations Geneva on the threats of our heritage, the Human Rights Convention Expert Mechanism of Human Rights and Indigenous People, 15th session. So it was actually there that he turned around and said the 19 women that were supposed to come, there were no women. They were, this is 221, I went over there in 222. Within a year, all of them were murdered. So he was there representing, oh, it gives me goosebumps. He was there representing these women. And then to hear another lady get up there and say their villages are being burnt down, and while they're being burnt down by government officials and policing in that area, right, the mining company is coming right behind them. Bodies of kids, bodies of women taken, men just being, it was horrific. I tell you, I've never heard anything in real, and it was absolutely horrific. Knowing what has happened to my culture and my people, that it still continues. And we are fighting the same fight, but in a whole different way. Because if the government wanted, they would do exactly that, wipe us out, genocide. There would be nothing. So that was a pretty humbling experience, and I tell you what, I will never forget that. And it's made me a more, I suppose it's made me committed, because it's something that we all got to be together on. You know, it's a dog-eat-dog world, but we're programmed from the moment we're born. We go to school, you got to do this. You leave school, you got to get a job. You got to do this, you got to do that. We all have to live, right? We all have to eat. We all got to put bread on the table to eat, lights on, whatever. At the end of the day, it comes with a price. This was an amazing turnout. This is the 50 people that came. Here we go, first march since those oldies put it out there in the borough. And that even blew me away more, because that particular date felt like I wasn't alone. Like the community come together. We did this march, first biggest march ever. And for the help of my friends and the allies that I had around me, we were in a good space. We actually flew from United Nations, 26-hour trip, poof, landed, showered, washed up, poof, got there and did our big thing. And I tell you, yeah, I was in a high, but it just went poof like that really fast because I was so tired. But this is what we've tried to do. Come together as people. No matter what diversity everyone was, it was about one thing, water, water, air. Doesn't matter what bloodline you are, what country, what culture, the food you eat, 2 things in life, water and air, is what we all need to survive. This lady, I'd like to say I enjoyed this. It was an experience, I could say. Tanya Pilbasek, Minister for Water and Environment. Yeah, there you go, see, he's agreed too. So that was she spent, half the day with Murujuga because, they're supposed to be on end all of all culture in the Pilbara, in our area. That's a lie, it's wrong, and I'll say it right now. All right, you're certain people for certain areas. It is part of our cultural protocols. You don't go swimming in someone else's lane. All right, and unfortunately the government had this happen. They made this, right? They made us, and they got us in there, and they made our old people sign a document. They had no idea what they were signing. Years, not even months later, bang, those gentlemen done. They're gone, they're dead. This place is a spiritual place. I would say don't F with it, true, that's a true yarn. But this is what I had to deal with. This lady comes in, she's all sweet, lovely, and I told her, Tanya, straight up, don't do me wrong, because I am coming to fix this. I'm coming for blood, because this is personal. This is where my mum put me, for us all, not just for me and my family, for everybody. Nothing. This here, when you talk about young people, my baby, his girlfriend, love her to death, but anyway, this is the first time in Sydney, and we just happened to be at the Pride party, biggest party in the world. And we just walked through and went, this is all new for us, being up in the country bumpkin up from the Pilbara. It was fascinating, it was amazing. But the fact that, the school at the time wanted me to come there and do a climate thing, and there was supposed to be about 10,000 people there, and I was like, okay. Yep, sure, and I had to actually come back and do an emergency, come back to Western Australia because I had something else happening here, which actually was in Perth, one of the ovals here. So I asked my son, 23 at the time, to go in there. He was one of the first rangers out at Murujuga, straight from school, straight in there, get into work. But he loved it because I knew it was a space he had the heart for. And imagine being out in a pristine land where it's just red rocks, aqua green, blue waters, and just being out. That's your office every day. That's where I want to be. And that's where we all want to be. If it keeps going like this, there ain't going to be anything like that. But this is his first time, and he did his little speech. That was a proud moment for me and for him, And this is what we want to do, bring our young people to the space. And look, you look at it now, who's talking? The young people are talking. And when they start talking, they're like me, they don't shut up, but they still are talking. This is it. This is what we need from them. Oh, this is a really bad shot of me. This is on one of my islands going out, and they followed me around everywhere. And they reckon there's no whales out there. I'm like, okay. And I'm with DBCA, mind you, government mob. Our elders, family, all the mob that were a part of this. That munda there belongs to me. That's why I got this turtle made. That was given to me by my old people. This here is one of the islands. The islands are unbelievable out there, and this is old fishing, trapping place, right? Just some more photos of, look, all the allies that we have, this is it, future for everybody. So it's been an amazing space, an amazing journey, and at the end of the day, okay, these spunky people over here, this is my kids, not all of them, well, yeah. I've worked hard. My sister's kids, my brother's kids, my one granddaughter belonged to my baby sister. This is what I do. This is out at Fortescue River. Big songline comes from there, creation story. And it's all along the coast. The Gallara people, the saltwater people, that's the law I go by. And the law that comes from over the ocean, that's something that needs to be tweaked a lot. However, this and these people, and since then, this is a photo taken about 3 years ago. There's several new grandkids that have come in already. I don't know how the Christmas bucket's going to go every Christmas. It's like, they're making me think. All right, ready to go? Okay, I've got to get off. Thank you for stopping me, because I don't know what else to say now.
I gave Ray a long 15 minutes, but I'm sure you'll agree that was the right thing to do. So I think for activists from eastern states, when I said at the outset that this is the fossil fuel Death Star, I think Ray's made it very clear that that's not bullshit. That is exactly what it is. Just one take-home statistic. Just the increase in emissions from the expansion of the gas industry in the last decade alone more than offsets every single solar panel that's been put on every roof in Australia. It's an out of control freight train of gas emissions. But of course, the dispossession that's still happening, it didn't just happen 200 years ago, the dispossession of Aboriginal people wrecks people's lives. And there's a hell of a lot of work that needs to be done, and work that we're going to have to do together. And someone who just picks themselves up and just keeps battling away on that front, as I said before, every single day without fail is Megan Krakouer. Megan's going to bring you up to speed on the actions that she's been part of. By the time we do that, we're probably not going to have time for questions. I apologise for that, but I think it's really important that we hear from Megan. So, Megan, jump on it.
In my hand. I'd like to acknowledge the Noongar people. We have a powerful Noongar nation, over 40,000 people in Noongar country. I'd like to acknowledge the Wajak people, powerful people in this country again. I'd like to acknowledge you all for coming along, the powerful work that's being done right across the country in terms of activists, advocates, people that care, is obviously profound, and it's profound in this room today, so thank you. Petrina, I know you're watching, sad that you can't be here. You're here in spirit, but we're lucky to have Sam. I want to also acknowledge some of the mob here today, like the Novas, who's been absolutely incredible with helping with all the activism and coming along to where we had 3 young Aboriginal men who passed away in a car accident up in Port Hedland within the last couple of weeks. Nova coming along on Friday night where there was a powerful vigil was incredible. Also Liam, Caleb, and all our friends that we have with Socialist Alliance here in Western Australia, we're very grateful. Also to Sister Raelene, what a powerhouse. First time I've heard her speak and it's just like, I could have listened to you speak all day. But I want to start this off just talking about a number of things. We're all brothers and sisters of the human family. That's the truth of it. Right now, we're fighting a deportation matter of a non-Indigenous fella. 1 castle sentence, and this dear soul, he's going to be deported on Wednesday, sorry. And my colleague, he's contacted 26 politicians, and this man who's been over here from a very young age with his children and his grandchildren, he's going to be deported on Wednesday, and that breaks my heart. So that again questions what's government's doing in relation to deportations and our liberties and so forth as human beings. So that's really quite heartbreaking. Where I come from is a place called Mount Barker. Mount Barker, home of the chickens, cherries, wines, beautiful countryside. My mum and dad, they're buried there. I'm the youngest of 13 children. The older brothers, they went across to North Melbourne back in the day, the North Melbourne Footy Club in 82, and that's where they set their mark on the footy scene over in Victoria. It was the Victorian Football League at the time, but now it's become the AFL. But they went across, and we come from a very, very humble family. Mum and Dad, rest in peace, lived on the outskirts of Mount Barker, lived in a little tin humpy. And we just had a lot of love and kindness and respect. And I just remember the days growing up, there was a lot of togetherness. If someone was in trouble, come around for a feed, have a damper, have a feed, that type of stuff, have a yarn. There was so much of that. But in terms of the brothers, they did go across over to Melbourne and they did set their mark with the VFL at the time. They were the highest paid footy players. But where we are at this point in terms of the brothers, there's now a class action against the AFL in relation to the discrimination that they were subjected to as people coming from Mount Barker to Perth to play with Claremont, and then across to North Melbourne. So there's a historic class action that's been launched against the AFL, and that's incredibly important because we have a lot of Aboriginal people coming through, playing football, and they should be safe and supported in their environments. With the brothers being called Black Seas, mother effers and so forth, and all the other horrible things that were said to them, you know, it tortures, it hurts, and we're a proud family, we're dignified. The work of the National Suicide Prevention Trauma Recovery Project with myself, my colleague, and we've got some colleagues on now, basically we provide the most support, a lot of support to the most marginalised, the vulnerable, the voiceless, the silenced, the forgotten, the unheard, incarceration, suicide, child removals, homelessness, things that hurt our people. Whether you're black, white or brown, we fight against. We use our voice. We raise the other voices of those that may have been forgotten, those that have been hurt, those that want to be part of a movement to push back and say, no, no more. We're going to fight you all the way, and we're going to use our voice, and we're going to come together. And that's exactly what we've done in many of the different campaigns that we've run. Before I go on a little bit further, there's just a short video that I want to play. It's an ABC article, video clip. It's about 3 or 4 minutes in relation to a young fella, Cleveland Dodd, rest in peace. He was a young person who passed away in Casuarina Prison, Unit 18. You've got Banksia Hill, and we've got 132 carceral estates right across the country, but of the 132, there are 17 youth detention centres. In Western Australia, it's Banksia Hill. At the time, the Department of Corrective Services, Department of Justice, they thought, oh, there's too many little troubled children here. They're making a lot of noise. They're naughty kids. They can't be controlled. Let's send them over to Casuarina Prison. Casuarina Prison is a maximum security prison for males. And they designed a unit in there called Unit 18. This little fella, he took his life on the 12th of October. And we fought against the government. We said, do not open that place. Because the history that I have with Banksia Hill and Corrective Services and quite a few organisations in Western Australia, but indeed right across the country, is that there was other ways of doing it. There's other ways of helping these children. It's called love, it's called kindness, it's called nurturing. I'd worked in Banksia Hill with my colleague, and at the time of going in, and this was at the height of the pandemic, there were 18 young girls, and by the time we left, there were 7, over a period of 8 weeks. We worked in with the girls. The Corrective Services mob, oh, you want to get an office? No, we're going to mix it with these young ones. We want to be there, we want to be present, we want to help, we want to support, we want to love, and we want to give them ways forward. So that was really quite successful, but we fought against the government really hard in relation to the Banksia Hill, but I want to tell you how that comes about, how that came about after we watched this short video in relation to the fails on that particular night in relation to Cleveland Dodd.
And they took it from him. They took the rest of his life from him.
The grief and anger over the death of Cleveland Dodd is still raw.
Being locked in these places 22, 23, 24 hours a day. Who can survive that?
What is it going to take before they shut Unit 18 down? Another death?
The state government has had little to say about what happened inside Unit 18 that night. But the ABC has seen a number of documents which fill in the gaps and reveal a completely different story to the one the government has shared.
The boy had contacted officers via the intercom.
He told them twice he was going to take his own life and how he'd do it.
It was only a matter of minutes from that moment until he was checked and found to be unresponsive.
It was almost 13 minutes. 13 minutes before an officer found him hanging in his cell.
And the officers commenced resuscitation, and they were able to successfully regain a pulse.
Just before 1:30 in the early hours of October 12, Cleveland Dodd told officers he was going to hang himself. Around 1.5 minutes later, an officer conducting routine checks speaks with him, but for less than 20 seconds. Approximately 3 minutes later, he makes the same threat over his intercom, this time telling officers how he intends to take his own life. It's not for around 9 minutes that the officer that had had that short conversation with him sees him hanging in his cell as he walks back past. But he can't do anything to help. Officers aren't routinely given radios at night, so he can't call for the cell to be opened, and he can't call an emergency code red. He needs to get to his supervisor, who holds all the cell keys in the control room. It's another minute and a half before Cleveland's cell is opened and the officer can start CPR. And it takes another 6 minutes for anyone to call an emergency code red. Cleveland finally leaves Unit 18 in an ambulance almost an hour after he uttered his final words. Detainees should be visible to officers at all times because of video cameras in their cells, but Cleveland had covered his camera that afternoon. He was out of sight for close to 12 hours before he tried to take his own life. Welfare checks are also supposed to happen every 15 minutes, either via CCTV or in person. According to documents seen by the ABC, Cleveland's checks were filled right up until 6 a.m, even though he'd left the prison in an ambulance hours earlier. Crucially, the vent Cleveland used as a weapon against himself was broken. Contractors had come to the prison multiple times to replace it, including the day before he tried to take his own life, but left without completing the job. It's unclear why. The ABC has asked the Corrective Services Minister, Paul Papalia, and his department detailed questions on the events that unfolded. In a statement, the government said it couldn't comment further as 3 investigations into Cleveland's death were currently underway. The department also said it was inappropriate for it to respond to specific questions, instead stating it takes all threats of self-harm seriously and increases supervision of detainees considered at higher risk, adding officers undertake regular checks of all young people in their care. Catherine Diss, ABC News.
So, in relation to Banksia Hill at the beginning, what we did is that we went around and we teamed up with Levitt Robinson lawyers. They're based over in Sydney, and they were the ones that sued the state of Queensland for the people of Palm Island, which they won. We'd taken lots of statements and testimonies of people that wanted to be on this class action, because in terms of Banksia Hill, it was opened up in 1997. There's been over 10,000 children that have gone through there, black, white and brown. 70% have gone on into adult carceral estates, and that's absolutely a demise in itself. It's absolutely wrong. We'd had protests, and that's why I want to say a great deal of thanks to Petrina, to also Sam, because when no one else was there, they were. We may have been small in numbers, and then we just grew, one rally after the next after the next. There were people at Corrective Services laughing, oh, there's not too many of them today, they won't be able to do anything. It's like, no, we're going to fight with truth and conviction, and the media was strong. And we had to do a lot of talking and relationship building with the media to take out the correct narrative. But in terms of where it is today with Cleveland, rest in peace, shortly thereafter this particular video, this clip, Paul Papalia, this Minister for Corrective Services, he shortly thereafter came out and said, we take full responsibility for the death of Cleveland Dodd, never done before in Western Australia. A CCC, they turned around and got involved. The coronial inquest, of course, about 2 months ago, we had the first 8 days. We come back in the courts on the 22nd for the next 3 weeks of the coronial inquest into this little one here. But the CCC, that absolutely hurt me, it gutted the family because of the absolute atrocious findings in that particular one. It found, and it was released on the about 3 weeks ago, there was no serious misconduct. No serious misconduct, and therefore charges can't be laid. Right across this country, in terms of the black deaths in custody, there has not been one conviction. Here there was evidence. We've seen the footage. We've seen so much in terms of the fails. In the first 8 days of the coronial inquest, you've seen one guard come after the next, after the next, after the next, saying it was a sinking ship, and how they could not keep up with the demands of the young children that was placed in that place. So this coronial inquest in relation to Cleveland, that will be powerful, because it will bring the bosses in to say why they failed this kid, because they all knew about it. The thing about in terms of gathering information, we had people from the inside of Department of Corrective Services telling us things, so we knew what to go for. And this is all about that relationship building. So, you know, there's lots of tears, and the truth for the family is something what they wanted. But in the history of Western Australia, a coronial inquest ordinarily takes 2 to 3 years. This one here, we pushed so it was done within 6 months. On the 7th of September in 2019, a Yamaji woman, she was shot by the police, Joyce. This beautiful lady here. She leaves behind a young boy, his name is Caesar. Coronial inquest for Joyce, rest in peace, is in Geraldton on Monday. It goes for 2 weeks. We have a break for a week, that's when we come back into the courts with Cleveland Dodd. But we have to be who we are, and we have to continue to fight back, because if we don't, the incarceration will not be abated. The child removal rates will not be abated. The homelessness will not be abated. And that's why I'm proud of all our brothers and sisters that take to the media, that take to the streets there, that speak their truth, because together we are powerful. So in relation to Joycey, rest in peace, she'd spent some time in prison. And then she came out of prison. And she was released into homelessness. And there was fails in relation to the mental health, by not providing what is right for our First Nations people, the most marginalised and vulnerable. We know right across the country, 40% of our people lie below the poverty line by 40%. 40%. It's like, government, get your shit together. Increase the Centrelink if that's what you're going to do, for all brothers and sisters that are in that situation. But in Western Australia, it is 60%. And it is cruel. And when you're at the coalface, when you're immersed in the grim reality and you see the pain, the suffering, the hurt every single day, whether it be a police brutality situation, whether it be a suicide, whether it's a mother who is at a hospital and she gives birth to a baby who is taken straight away from that hospital and leaves that mother so broken to the point where she takes her life. That is wrong on every single level. The suicide crisis right across this country is absolutely atrocious. It is a crisis for all people, black, white and brown. We're all impacted, either directly or indirectly. 10,000 people, dear souls, have taken their lives in 3 years. And the West Australian government, the federal government, think that's okay. There's no emphasis on that, about lifting people from poverty, about helping people with their mental health, to be there for one another, as we once were as First Nations people of this original country, of this country. Who can accept that 10,000 people across this country have taken their lives in the last 3 years? In fact, 1 in 26 Australians take their life each year. That is atrocious. And in terms of what we see with incarceration, it's out of control. 1 in 12 Aboriginal men are in prison today in Western Australia. 1 in 6 across this country have been to prison who are living today. We have a young man, rest in peace, who passed away recently over in a South Australian prison. And what, family have to bring him home to Broome to bury him? That is wrong, because he passed away in a South Australian prison. They need to help and support this family, get this young man home to his family, to where he comes from. In terms of the suicides, as I mentioned, it has gone from 1 in 23 First Nations people taking their lives to 1 in 16. in the last 10 years. That means that it's a leading cause of death for our people. We've recently, in the last 2 weeks, had 2 people, dear souls, bless their hearts, take their lives down here in Noongar country. But it's not just happening in Noongar country. It's happening in Yamatji country, it's happening in Yari country, it's happening over in Koori country, it's happening right across the country. Is it getting better? Absolutely not. And that's the truth of it. They want a truth tell. And the thing is, when we talk about truth, black people, a lot of our people have been truthful from the very beginning. There has been deaf ears, not wanting to hear the truth, not wanting to learn the truth, not wanting to ensure that those that are telling the truth are being validated so traumas can be disabled, so ways can be paved forward to ensure that our younger generation, the unborn, are coming into a healthy environment, because right now we are not. Many of our First Nations people, we are born into poverty. We are born into homelessness. We are born into very disadvantaged situations, and that is wrong. The legacy of a country, a legacy of a government, is not how much wealth is brought into a country, because we know that in terms of Australia, we are the 12th richest economy in the world. The legacy is, how many people do you leave behind to die on the streets, to have babies taken, to suicide? And it is cruel in every single respect. Lidia earlier spoke about the child removal rates for 24,000 young people that are in care currently. 24,000. They had the Royal Commission, not a Royal Commission, they had an inquiry back in 1997. That was the Bringing Them Home report. There was 2,000 black kids in care at that particular point. 1997. And then our beautiful Prime Minister gets up in 2008, Mr. Rudd, and he apologises to the stolen generation. 8,000 black kids in care. Bit of an increase. Things are meant to be getting a little bit more progressive. And then today, 24. Where is the fault? Where is the blame? People say all these things that are really quite hurtful, but the reality is the statistics do not lie. And the Productivity Commission, it said that suicides are not getting better, incarceration is not getting better, and child removals is not getting better. That is a cruel and shameful indictment, not only on the West Australian government, but on the federal government. They speak these narratives, they speak these statistics, but do they mass invest into the most marginalised and vulnerable? No, they don't. Not in ways that should. So when you see these lives being lost unnecessarily, prematurely, it does nothing but break your heart, because things could have been done better. Annalise, rest in peace, the 11-year-old who took her life. It was just absolutely the most horrible day. And I remember getting that phone call, and I said, Jerry, this is what's just gone on. A little girl down in Boddington, she's just self-harmed. We need to go to the hospital and help this mob out. So we went to the hospital, and we were there with the family, and we helped in so many ways, because we are the sum of our relationships. So I was able to make calls with all these different people to make sure people from the prisons came to the hospital and all these other things. But the life support machine did get turned off. 11 years old. And I thought, how could we fail this kid as a community? Mum, shortly after the little girl had passed away, she says, Aunt, we've got these people coming in from the coroner's office. They want to ID little Annalise, rest in peace. Can you come with me? So I said, sure, no worries, darling, I'll come with you. Went into that hospital room, and I just stroked this little girl's hair, and I seen her beautiful little innocent face, and I thought, and you're going to have to excuse me, how the fuck could we let this kid down? How the fuck could we let this kid down? Homelessness. Reports were made to Department of Child Protection about a range of issues, about accommodation. Department of Communities, they didn't help. We left these ones in a situation where they were vulnerable. The perpetrator at the time, because of the bail laws, had been released back into the town where she came from. And as a result of Samantha, who is the mum, she raised her voice, she spoke, one interview after the next after the next. I remember one day she did 6 interviews in a row and then she sicked up. And it was so hard for her. And she cried, but she knew that she had to be Annalisa's voice. What's come out of that is that the bail laws in Western Australia have now been amended. You go back a couple of years ago, there was, through the advocacy, we've seen a lot of attitudes change in so many respects. So these are just a couple of families that I've been involved in. There's been at least 29,000 individuals that we've helped and supported right across the country on a whole range of issues over the last 5 years. And a lot of it's not pretty. And a lot of it's, in fact, had there been mass investments, instead of funding same organisations, things could change. I said to Linda Burney, you fund the same, you're going to get the same. I said to Malindiri McCarthy, you fund the same, you're going to get the same. You need to think outside the square box. The same way that you're funding these big organisations, it's now time to lift these little guys up because they have massive reach out in community. This is not just an Aboriginal problem, it is an everybody problem because we're being hurt at rates never seen before in this country. Whilst we have so many Aboriginal people, dear souls, rest in peace, take their lives in the prison setting, 3 times as more in terms of non-Indigenous people take their lives. Where is their voice? Where is the advocacy for our non-Indigenous brothers and sisters experience the same type of atrocities, the human rights violations and so forth? I'm just mindful of time here right now, but there's a couple of things, and I could yarn all day too, but I'm very mindful of time there. We have to be who we are 24/7. No matter who you are, no matter who you go before, you've got to be who you are 24/7. The way that I'm dressed now, I'll chuck a beanie on every now and then. I'll go in to catch up with some of these ministers and someone will say, my sister usually, how come you're not dressing up for these, when you go for these meetings? I said, they're no more important than the people that I just came from. You've got to be who you are 24/7. I remember, and I'll just finish up in the next 2 minutes there. A lot of these government people, they have the power in so many respects, but they do not have the authority. They do not have the cultural authority when it comes to destroying land, comes to trying to destroy culture. That is one thing that we need to smack back at them every single time. You may have that power, but we're going to challenge you on that because you sure as hell don't have the cultural authority. I remember, and this is where it takes that courage. I remember one time going on that show there, the drum there, and I was just yarning away as you do. But I was cracking at this Mark McGowan because Mark McGowan, he destroyed so many things in this country. Yeah, people say he's a big father of the COVID crisis and so forth, but he left a lot of other people in tatters. And I remember going on this drum and I said, Mr McGowan, our Premier of Western Australia, clearly doesn't have a heart, so I'll go to the butcher shop and get him one. They actually ran with it, shame job. But the one thing that really disappointed me, and I know I'm finishing, Sam, is on the 11th of June 2024, in terms of the CCC, when they gave their findings in relation to Cleveland Dodd, when they said there was no serious misconduct. What a joke. What a joke. So I spoke to Auntie Glenda Mob, who's the grandmother for little fella, and they're going to come back down in numbers because they live in Meekatharra. And we're going to fight back against this. We're going to hit the streets. We're going to really fight hard in the media and so forth. The 2 powerful, high-profile inquests, I'll go up to Geraldton there tomorrow with Auntie Ann Mob. But you see the impacts in terms of Little Caesar. the stories of him just hating on police because of what they did to the mother is devastating. And when you actually see the video, it just makes no sense. And when there was the trial, we talk about the rule of law. The rule of law has to be equal for everyone, but it was not. The man, his name is Brent Wyndham, the police officer at the time. He was still working in Geraldton after the shooting. But he had never spent one night in jail, not one night. They picked him up, brought him down to Perth, went to the magistrates' court, across to the district court, see you later, you're on bail until the trial. If that was a black person, that black person would have been in that prison, or someone who didn't have the means, a non-Indigenous brother or sister. If that was them in the same situation, they would have been locked up until the trial date. So these are some of the issues that we have. The intense psychosocial support, the assertive outreach and 24/7 approach right across the country with every single person, especially the most marginalised and vulnerable, is needed. Statistical narratives aren't getting better. This government, federally, is failing our people. This government in Western Australia, they are also failing our people. It is a classist narrative, and money speaks, position, titles, relevancy. They choose not to listen, but what do? We stand up, we fight back, and we change the narrative. Thank you.
I told you that Megan would put a lump in your throat, and in fact we should have introduced her with the photo. You know, she made the thing about, you know, you've got to be who you are 24 hours, 7 days a week. Like, we should have put up the photo of her at the Perth Citizen of the Year award ceremony, wearing her dress covered in Black Lives Matter slogans. That was just to embarrass her. But also thanks for reminding us, Megan, that these things are choices. Perth, this is one of the wealthiest corners of the earth. And you just go out the door there and there's a homeless centre and there's homeless people. And that church that provides that service, their administration gave a report to the federal government that said every rough sleeper costs the emergency admission hospital system $108,000 a year. So it will be cheaper to house every single one of those people. It's a deliberate choice. And unless people like us get together, it's a choice they're going to keep on making. All right, we haven't got time for discussions, for questions, but I think that's a good thing because the contributions have just been absolutely fantastic. We've got another session that was supposed to start 15 minutes ago, so including one in this room which is supposed to be live streamed. So just so as you know, if you're sticking around for the workshop No Rainbow Capitalism, that's the one that's going to be taking place. That's the one that's going to be taking place here, okay? And the second workshop, Strike Back, is organising workers in unorganised industries. That will be in the second workshop room. So if you're going to that one, you head out there, go down the laneway, all the way down to the end of the laneway towards the gates, and then you'll see a door into it's called the Jitty Jitty training room. There's toilets down there as well. So if you're busting, best to go down there, especially if you're going to that workshop. So if you need to go to the loo, grab a cup of tea, something like that, please do it as quick as possible. For people that are just catching up, that sort of stuff, don't do it in this room because we've got a live streamed workshop that needs to start here in 5 minutes' time. Also, just so as you know, with the workshops after lunch, the one that's about the struggle to create people power and a new left in Singapore, that will actually be tomorrow. In its place today, so 3:30, will be the one titled "How Capitalism Ruined the Internet." So just if you're keen for those two, that's where they'll be. Grab a cuppa and line up for the workshops. Thanks a lot, and a big thanks to our speakers again before you go.